Hello everybody, it is time for another Summer Class Pass project. Today we're going to be working on the sampler stars that is inside of the Desert Stars pattern from Atkinson Designs. You might notice that in your newsletter from Summer Class Pass, it shows the name Simple Stars, and then it shows a picture actually of sampler stars. So we're going to make sampler stars today, and then we'll do simple stars down the road on the day that this is due. With that being said, to make sure we avoid any confusion, the pattern for this is called Desert Stars. And inside of Desert Stars, you have a pattern for simple stars and sampler stars. So you're getting two projects from one pattern. So once again, today we're going to do sampler stars. It is 4 different blocks, and I'll go through those with you. What I've decided to do on this is it's a lot of quick chain piecing, and we're actually going to make the blocks in order of the way they're shown in the pattern. So we'll actually be starting on page 3, which says the sampler stars cutting. With that being said, get everything cut out before you start this project. It's really quick, simple cutting. And then we're going to just go through the blocks. So for example, this block here, it just says sewing for this block. It doesn't have a block number. So each one of these will be a different set of instructions. A couple of things to pay attention to, and I'll review those as we go. When you're laying them out, make sure you have contrast on anything that is touching a border. And this one's a really good example, and so is this one. You want to line up anything that is going into your dark border actually with a lighter piece, okay? So I would actually turn this block this time so that this piece or this piece is actually touching the darker instead of my darker fabrics. It's no big deal, but it's a really good way just to kind of pay attention to what you're doing and put as much contrast in your blocks that are using an outer border piece. All right, so let us take a look at our cutting board, and we're going to go through the blocks, and then we're going to start chain piecing. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to do one complete block, and then we'll move on to the next block. So there'll be a little bit of pressing in between, but we're going to chain piece everything that we can. I always chain piece as much as I can before I assemble. That way when I go to press, I'm up, I'm pressing, I'm doing any trimming I need to do, and then I'm back to the machine. So you'll kind of see my method of this. Once we finish the first block, we'll move on to the next page, we'll do the next block, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at our cutting table. All right, so here we are at the cutting table, and what you're going to find is for each block, it's going to tell you the pieces that you need. An example, it's telling us that we need 4 prints. I'm going to set this over here. It needs 4 prints. It tells you that what white, and your outer border in this project is just called the dark. So our example is going to be, we've got some squares, we have some prints, and then your prints tell you that you need double. So 2 of each of the prints in the smaller size square. So if you guys remember a minute ago, I was talking about anything that's touching this outside dark. So I really would prefer to not put this piece with this piece. Although the camera shows it pretty nicely, it doesn't necessarily show as nice as it is when you do it. So I'm actually going to put this piece over. So one thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a 4 patch. So we're going to take 1 each of our 4 fabrics, and we're going to set those aside for 4 patches. And then that's going to leave us some other 2-inch or 2.5, I'm not sure what size those are. All right, and we're going to be putting them onto this. So when we go to the machine, we're going to be chain piecing a 4 patch, and then we're going to be making our star points. Then we are going to go back and assemble our block. You'll note in the pattern that there are pressing arrows. So that is the direction in which you guys are going to want to press everything so everything nests together nicely. What we'll be doing is we're going to be adding on pieces to these dark and to these white pieces. So we're going to be doing we're going to be putting them on in the corner, and then typically you're going to draw a line. Now I'm actually going to use my Hera marker to draw that line, so I've got it lined up. I'm going to go point to point, and I am going to draw myself a line with my Hera marker. Now the other thing that I do at this point is I take my trusty glue pen. I'm going to lift this up right here, and I'm just going to put a dab of glue right there. I want that to hold into place. I'll be trimming this off later. So then I need to do this a couple more times. We'll actually be doing that 3 times. And I just realized where I counted wrong earlier. So we'll be doing this 3 times. So I'm going to lay this on again. I'm going to take my Hera marker and I'm just going to draw that crease for myself so I know where I'm going to be sewing. Might be hard for you guys to see on camera, but when you guys do this at home, if you use this or a friction pin, water soluble, whatever you choose. I flip this back and a piece. So this is going to be ready to chain piece in just a minute. When I put this on, I'm bringing it right to that point, and then I'm sliding my ruler to make sure, and then I will do a mark. I'm going to lift this piece back, glue dot, then this is going to be ready, and I have one more piece to go, and that's going to go here. Hera marker. All right. So those are ready to chain piece. I'm going to go ahead and lay out a 4 patch and decide how I want it. Now I know that I'm going to want my darker pieces. I want my darker pieces opposite and my lighter pieces opposite. So I want a chain piece. So I'm going to take a dab in that seam allowance. I'm going to put that there. And then I'll put this there. And then I'm going to set that just like that. So this block is actually ready to go chain piece. We need to do these steps before we can assemble the block. So let's go ahead and head on over to the sewing machine. Alrighty, so for the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stitch the 1/4 inch seam for my 4 patch. All right, now I just have a little magnet here. So I use multiple machines when I film. This is just set up for me to piece so I don't break down my embroidery machine. This is just a guide magnet because I don't particularly like the 1/4 inch foot that comes on this machine. So I'm just going to remove that. And what we're going to be doing is, and you guys can see that line that Hera marker left. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to sew on the line for these points. You guys are gonna love. You guys see that? You'll see this extra piece here. You don't have all these star points that have to be perfect because they're not actually going into a 1/4 inch seam. So you guys are gonna get your points every time. So we're just gonna sew right on that line. You'll see it'll come right out, and we're gonna chain piece until we've done the 4 of these. All right, so let's go ahead now that this chain piecing is done, and let's head over to the pressing and cutting table. All right, so here we are. I'm just going to cut apart my chain, which has my 2 sets for the 4-patch. And so when you guys look at your instructions, you're going to see, so she has you press this open, okay? I'm actually just going to press it to my dark on both sides. So I'll press again to the dark. Okay, so then this 4-patch will be ready to assemble. So since I'm right here with it, I'm just going to go ahead and nest that into place. I'm going to grab a couple of straight pins, and I'm going to pin that right in place so that it is ready to go. All right, so this is ready to go back to the machine. Now on these, we're going to be trimming these away. I never trim until I've pressed. And the reason is I want something sturdy to press to with that underneath fabric. So I want that to be very sturdy. And you guys are going to see that point I told you, you're not worried about a point. So we're going to go ahead and set that seam. Going to press that. So after I've done my pressing, I'll go back and trim. Now you guys can do it a couple of ways. You guys can go ahead and open it up and trim it with your ruler like this. So you can open this up. And you can trim it for that 1/4 of an inch and then get rid of this. So then you see you guys just have a nice piece. Everything is all lined up. Or you can just eyeball that 1/4 of an inch, which is typically what I do on these. I definitely need to go into the other room and grab my longer scissors. So either way, it doesn't matter, but don't trim them until you've pressed them. Once again, it gives you a much crisper seam. So you're pressing to 2 pieces of to a full piece of fabric instead of to that small 1/4 of an inch seam. All right. So I have these ready. So what will happen is we're going to be ready to assemble this block. There's a 4-patch in another one of the other blocks, and I'm not going to repeat how to make the 4-patch, but I'm just quickly going to sew this. I'm going to very quickly sew this. All right, so that 4-patch has been sewn. I'm going to go ahead and set the seam. We're going to press that open. And then we have our 4-patch. So we're actually ready to assemble this block. And let's talk about how that is going to look. So we're going to have a 4-patch. And it's really important the way that this whole project lays out. It's extremely important that you guys assemble it the way that it is shown. And so here's going to be the example. We're going to have a dark piece on each corner, okay? So I'm actually going to flip this to here like this. This is going to be all white. And then we're just going to lay these out. flip that. And I just got to double check. I did that. It goes this way. Oh, I had that one right. So there's your star, there's your star, there is your star, and there is your star. So got that? And then these are going to come together just like this. So that will be your first block. So we're going to sew this to this. We're going to sew this to this. We're going to sew here. We'll sew here. Just like that. All right? And so we'll go to the machine, we'll sew it, we'll press, and then we'll do a final assembly. So let's head on over to the machine. Now, I did put in my little dab of glue on my corners before I came to the machine. So we're going to go ahead now and just chain piece these blocks together. All right, so I'm back at the sewing table, or at the pressing table, and we are ready to actually assemble this block. But you want to pay attention to your pressing, okay? So paying attention to your pressing on this is important because you want everything to nest together. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to press these out and these in, all right? So just so you know, those out, those in, and this is how I do it. I'm going to turn it. This is my piece that was on top. I'm going to set that seam. And set it. So we're pressing away from the center. Once again, you guys see I sewed all those done, so I'm always going to press whatever happens to be laying on top. Set it, press it. Now these ones are going to go out to here, all right? So what I do here is I'm going to press it here. I'm going to set that seam, and then I'm going to just go ahead and open that up, finger press it, let the heat of your iron do the work for you. Press. You guys are going to notice how nice these points lined up with your four patch. So here is my block that is going to be ready to pin and finish, and then we'll have the first block complete. The only thing that we'll be adding after we're done is we'll be adding one border piece here, okay? So one border piece there. And I just looked at this and realized I cut this piece 1/2 inch short. So we'll fix that real quick. I've got a piece right here. So let me fix that. I cut it at 9 inches and not 9.5. All right. So then this piece here, we'll finish it up. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to nest these pieces here to get it ready. So I'm going to pin the whole thing. And then we're going to nest this piece here. I go right into my seam and right back out. I am going to just put a pin here because I have this seam and that seam going together that way, so everything will just lay flat, and then you guys will see it's all set and lined up at the edges. I'll take this piece here. I'm going to flip it and nest it. I'm going to nest it. Then when I finish this one, because I've got pins in it, I'm just going to sew this very last piece. So let's head on over to the machine. All right, so we're back at the pressing table, and here is our first block complete. We're going to be pressing everything one direction. So I like to just hit just a little bit of spray starch, best press, whatever your favorite is, onto the back of those seams. And once again, we're going to be pressing, this is how it shows in your picture. We're going to be pressing everything down. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the opposite end. Let's set that seam. We're going to press like we're pressing down. So I flipped it upside down. We're going to press this. So you don't have a point to match. She made these all floating points to make it even easier. We'll press the center. So one seam at a time, we're going to press open. You guys notice I'm pressing each one. I'm not pushing that away. I'm pressing each seam. And then our last one here, once again, I flip it back to the back side. I press it. And then I finger press it open to make sure all of my seams, all of my intersections are laying nice and flat. All right, I'm going to give it one little spray of starch on the front side, and I'm going to give this block a nice final press, and this one will be done. All right, so here is the first block that we completed. And if you look at the table runner, it is this block right here. So we'll just go ahead and leave this block up, and we're going to move on to the next block. All right, for the next block, which is on page 4, so when it says for this block, I'm calling it block 2. It has another 4 patch in the center. I've already put the 4 patch together. I don't need to show you guys again how to do your 4 patch. But we're going to be making floating flying geese in here. And once again, I've made sure my fabrics that are going to go into my dark are set to, I've chosen what I want to be there. I think that the other side looks better than putting these 2 prints together, even though it shows okay on camera. All right, so what I'm going to do first is you're going to be using 4 prints, and you're going to be using 3 each. You're going to need to pay attention to your layout today, or excuse me, for this block, because you need to have the same pieces matching each one of your blocks. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so basically what's going to happen here is we need to make sure that this piece is here and here. These pieces are there all of the way around, okay? So we're going to do the same thing that we did. We're going to do the same thing that we did on the last one. We're going to be putting our fabric on. We're going to be drawing a line. and then we're going to be chain piecing. So once again, once I've drawn my line, your method of choice, I like to just put a dab of my glue pen down to make sure everything is going to stay where it needs to be. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go to this piece here. So I know that this piece here, that's where this one's going to go. And I need this piece next. So I'm going to go ahead and lay these where they need to go. All right, then I'll go ahead and turn them. I'll move this out of my way. I'll do my marking, my gluing, and then we're going to go right over to the machine and chain piece these. We're going to come back after we do that, and we're going to add the other side. We'll lay it out before we do that so that we make sure we've put the right pieces where they need to go. All right, so I've drawn all my lines. Get that exactly where I want it. I've drawn all my lines. And then once again, I like to just lift this up and give it a dab of glue. Once again, this is a glue pen, not a glue stick. So this is fabric to fabric. And there we go. So let me just tell you what we're going to do, because I'm just going to chain these. We're going to put them ready to go. We're going to go to the machine and we're going to chain piece them. We'll come back here. We're going to lay it out. We're going to lay our remaining piece. We'll put it on, and then we'll actually be ready to go ahead and assemble the second block. All right, so back at the pressing table, I'm going to set that seam, and then I'm going to go ahead and press these open, and then we'll trim out the back. So we've gone ahead and pressed all these. We're just going to quickly open this up, trim that to 1/4 of an inch. All right, now we definitely want to lay this back out. All right, so as you can see, we want that to match. We want that to match, this to match, and then this to match. So we will be putting our final piece on here. So you're going to lay that over. We're going to draw all of our lines, and we're going to go chain piece these, and then this block is actually ready to assemble. This is both of these runners that are in this pattern are really fast and simple. Once again, this just has multiple different stars in it. If there's a star after you've done this that you like better, just make all 4 that way. The only thing is you'll have to just pay attention to what side the final outer border piece goes on. All right, so these are ready to go back and chain piece, so let's head back to the machine. So as you guys saw, very simple chain piecing. Now, if I was making this not on camera, I would actually be setting all of my pieces up and chain piecing as much of each of the 4 blocks as possible all at one time. But I'm showing each block individually, but once again, making this sample, making this on my own, I would be definitely doing all of the chain piecing I could at one time, followed by all the pressing, and then assemble. All right, so those are all set. Make sure they're nice and flat from me folding them back to trim. And then here we go for assembly. We're just going to make sure that all of our pieces, we didn't mix a color up, which we did good. Did not mix anything up. So here is the next star. Which means we're going to put the dark pieces here, the light pieces here. So once again, we're going to be pressing. We'll be putting these just like this. So I'm going to go ahead and get these all ready to chain piece, and then we'll assemble the second block. Alrighty, so back at the cutting table, what you're going to want to make sure you do is the same thing we did last time. Pay attention to your pressing. We are going to be pressing to these outside pieces. The middle block will be pressed inside. So here's the top. All right. So once again, this is the middle piece. We want to press to the middle. So I'm starting from the outside. Guys, these points just line right up. Once again, it's upside down because we're pressing to the center. So I'll press it to the center. So again, points line up nicely. So we want to lay this out, and as you want to make sure everything's lined up where it goes. So here is your layout with your final piece on the bottom. Alrighty, so I'm going to, once again, same thing we did last time. We're just going to nest these seams together. I'm going to nest this one together. I like to put a pin right here in the center to hold that seam nice and flat because we've got lots of seams coming in together. We're going to flip that around. As you can see, everything still matches. Nest and pin. And then when we finish sewing those, we're going to throw on that bottom piece, and this block will be done. Okay, so I am back at the pressing table, and as a reminder, the way that they have you press is in the pattern, but we'll be pressing everything down. So once again, I flip because I've got so many seams, and I just give it a quick mist of whatever your favorite starch is at the time. We're going to be pressing down, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this seam. I did that one backwards, guys. Sorry about that. So we're going to be pressing down. So I set the seam, I turn it over, and then I'm pressing down. Flip it back, set the seam. So again, it's got a little bit of your favorite starch on it. Look again, all those points just match up perfectly. So follow the pressing because you're going to get everything to line up perfect. And then your final press. This one has the most seams in it, so really just finger press it first, make sure everything's where you want it. Then what I like to do is, now that I've got it to the front side, give it another little mist of spray starch. Once again, everything went down, and then I can just press, give this a nice finishing. And there is your next block. As you guys can see, lots of contrast up here. So let's put it over here on the runner that is already made with the block that we just finished. All right, so here is this block. That happens to be the block up here at the top. And so we'll go ahead and put this piece up there. Those of you that don't like to do borders, you're going to love this project because you're making the borders as you go. So when we assemble, your final assembly is just going to be 3 seams to do the blocks and then 1 end border piece, and that's all it is. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the third block is that we're going to make. Okay, so we are back to make our next block. Now this block has got a bit more piecing in it, and there's a couple things on the pressing that you're going to want to pay attention. So we're actually going to lay this entire block out, and then we'll do as much chain piecing as possible, and we're going to talk about the special pressing for this center section. So you're going to start by laying out a 4 patch, and then we're going to go ahead and put out our pieces here so that we kind of know. Now on these guys, they're going to get a white square in the middle. Now I've pre-drawn, I've done my Hera marker, and I've pre-drawn my line. So I'm just going to set these in place here. So we're going to be making some triangles here. Now this one is also one of those blocks where we're going to be lining up our colors so they're the same. So we're going to start here, and we're just going to go ahead and lay this one out. Once again, I want to get as much of the chain piecing done in one step as possible. So this piece is going to go here. So we'll go ahead and lay that there. And then we can do either one of these. So we're going to do this one right here. And then we're going to go and we're going to do this one right here. All right, so we are going to, once again, we're going to come here. We're going to draw that line. I am going to take my glue pen just to make it easier to hold everything together. So when I move to my machine, once again, I mark. Dab of glue. I mark. A dab of glue. All right, so there we go. Now on these ones, we're going to be doing the same thing. I've already marked all these, so all I'm going to do is put a dab of glue so that it is just easy when I pick them up and move over to my sewing machine. All right, so all these are set. So let's head on to the machine. We're going to chain piece again. Once again, we're sewing on the line. We're going to come back. There's special pressing for the center. We're going to press and trim on this side. We'll add the second piece by relaying it out, and then we're going to sew this block together. Okay, so back at the pressing table, once again, on these pieces that we're making the flying geese with, we're going to press it, and then we'll go back and trim out. So you're going to press those away just like we've been doing. And let's go ahead and set these ones to the side for a minute. Actually, we'll just really quickly, we'll go ahead and just trim out that 1/4 of an inch. All right, so we're going to set those to the side. We do want to relay this out to make sure we're getting the right pieces. Now, on this, if you guys remember, we laid this out. I dropped a piece. So we're going to lay this back out first, all right? Now, you're going to follow your pressing directions, but we're going to press 2 of these to the print. We're going to press the other 2 to the white. So let's do the 2 that are going to go to the white first. So there you go. And let's flip this in. And this one's going to go to the white. The reason we're going to do this is so that this 4 patch will nest for you. All right, so we've got those 2. Let's just go ahead and trim that piece out. So that's going to go there. Trim this piece out. It's going to go here. Now this one is going to get pressed the opposite. So it's going to be getting pressed this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it, and we're going to be pressing to the dark this time. We'll set it, and we're going to press to the dark. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to open that back up, and we're going to trim out to the 1/4 of an inch. All right. We're going to put those right back in. So what will happen is when we go to make our 4 patch, these are going to be pressed the opposite way. So then we can just nest them in place. But before I do that, I want to relay out what we did. And so you guys will see these needed to be put back in the opposite spot. All right, so there we go. So this is going to match, this will match, this will match, and this will match, which means we're going to come here and we're going to put this piece on. You guys know the routine by now. We're putting this piece on. Oops, this guy goes here. We're going to put this piece on. This piece goes here. Then, now that I know everything is where it should be, I'm going to go ahead, line it up again. And go ahead and do my marking. So I'm going to mark it and glue it. Line it up, mark it, glue it. Mark it and glue it. So you guys know the routine. All right, so those are going to be ready to go. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get these ready. And once again, these, because we press them the opposite, are going to nest right here into place. So we're going to nest that, and I'm going to put that pin right here at the angle to hold it. Same thing here. This is going to nest. All right, so then we are going to sew our seam. So we'll do 1/4 inch seam. We're going to add the other piece. So let's head on over to the machine. You pretty well know the routine now. So let's go ahead and pop these apart. We are going to press and trim. So now that these are trimmed, we can lay it back out. But we do need to sew our 4 patch together. So we're going to lay it out, make sure I've got my 4 patch going in the right direction. I'll quickly sew that 1/4 inch seam, and then we'll lay it out for the final. We're going to lay it out for the final placement. So I want to just double check, and I can really check this off of 1. So there we go. So I know that that's right. That's the only other way it can go. So I'm going to press these to the opposite sides of each other. You're going to have that white square in the center. Okay, so the white square in the center, I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to nest it. Let me just put a quick 1/4 inch seam in this. The one thing I do want to say about this particular block is everything nests together if you press correctly. So when you sew this seam for your 4 patch, if you've nested correctly, these are going to nest again together, and these are going to nest again together, so that when you actually press this, everything is perfectly nested and set to go. Now there's a lot of seams in this, so I'm just going to give it a little spritz on the back, press it, and then I'm going to do that same thing on the front side. All right, so let's lay this out. So here we go. That is where this goes. This is going to go here. This will go here. This is going to go here. We're adding 2 blocks, and we're adding 2 blocks. So you guys pretty much know this routine and how I do this. We are going to take a dab of glue. And once again, I'm going to get everything ready for chain piecing as I go. So I'm going to put this here. It's all lined up and ready to go. It's going to go into my machine the opposite way when I turn it. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to get that one, and it's set to go. I'm going to bring this here. This is going to go. I'm going to put this here. So that dab of glue, I'm now held into place. Now on this one, if you want, you can put a pin right here, and that's going to be your point, and that's going to hold those 2 together. Here's our next piece. Once again, this is how it goes in my machine. So I put my glue at the bottom. And once again, I bring a pin and I bring it right out at that point. So that's ready to do. It goes in my machine. So once again, I put my glue at the bottom. That way it doesn't move or shift as I sew my seam, which means the next piece is going to go this way. Those are set to go, and we're going to go chain piece these together. All right, so we're back to the pressing table, and we're going to do the final layout. So once again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to press, so the top and bottom block, we're pressing to the outside. The middle section, we're going to press to the inside. So there is the block. There's the top section. Here is your bottom section. Give that just a little extra heat. Sometimes if it doesn't feel like it pressed into place, just let the heat of that iron do that work for you. All right, so we're going to press these to the center. So we're going to flip the center in first. We're going to flip it back. Look how perfect those points are. Everything lines up right there where it needed to go. We'll flip it. So same process. You're going to lay this out until you have it correct. So there we go. Here is our bottom piece, and then we're going to add on the third. So once again, I'm going to flip and nest. I can't stress enough on this one to follow the pressing instructions. They are dead on exact. Sometimes we change pressing directions because we find we can do it maybe a little bit better or different, but this one is spot on. Once again, I'm going to put a pin right here in the middle, and I'm coming out right at this intersection so I make sure that everything is lined up. I'm going to flip this in place. I will turn it, nest it. And then once again, I'm going to put one right here. So all this is going to come into place. I'm going to come in and I'm going to pop out. Right at that point gives me an eye mark. It gives me a guide mark of where I want to make sure my needle hits. We'll take this piece with us. We'll sew it on, and then we'll press, and this block will be ready to go. Okay, so now we're back and we're gonna, once again, we're gonna press all one direction. So I'm gonna flip that over. I'm gonna give it a little mist. And once again, we're pressing down. So we're gonna be pressing all of the seams down. So I'm gonna start it here, set that in place, flip it back. Once again, I always finger press it open. That way I can make sure any seams are laying nice and flat. Bring it back to the center seam. This one, once again, this piece this time has a lot of pieces in it. So definitely take your time when you're pressing. Make sure everything is nice and flat. Did that one backwards, guys. Sorry about that. And we're going to press these. So the reason that you're pressing these all down is because they're going to alternate in the final assembly. And that way, these seams will all nest right together. And then I'm going to give this, once again, a nice little spritz. And we have just one more block to make, and then this runner is done. So if you want to take a look, here is this block, which goes here. And once again, we'll turn it. So by pressing these all one direction, which is down, which is towards this piece, you're going to see they alternate through the block or through the project, and then they'll nest right into place, and it'll make everything nice and easy. So we're down to our last block here, which we will make. So it's got quarter square triangles in the middle. It's a different technique. I had never done this technique before. Once again, flying geese around the edge. These ones are a little bit easier because we don't have to match them. Everything is the same on each side. So let's go ahead and get that block going. Okay, everybody. So we're back to assemble our final block. And what we need to do is we need to make the center square first. And it's got a couple of steps to it. So you're going to take your rectangles and you're going to line them up in pairs of 2. I'm going to lay it like this. And then here is my 45-degree mark on my ruler. So find your ruler with a 45-degree mark. What you want to do is bring it to the point and your 45 across the long edge all the way into the point. And there you want to draw your mark. Once again, with whatever marking tool of your choice, I'm going to flip this back and I'm going to hold and press that in place. So let me show you one more time. So here are my 2 pieces, right sides together. I'm going to use the 45-degree mark on my ruler. So whatever ruler you want to use, find the line that says 45, line it along your long edge, find your point, mark, and then once again, I am going to glue this, okay? So I'm going to glue that to make that happen. So I'm going to set that there. One difference is on this project, and I've already sewn on the first piece. I've sewn on the first piece. You guys have seen it for 3 other blocks. You really didn't need to see it again. The only difference this time is you're going to be matching the fabric. So there isn't a whole lot of planning that you have to do, with the exception of what color is going to go and contrast the best on your dark. I am going to line that up. All right, and once again, you guys know all my steps here. I'm just going to glue that right in place. So I'll find my corresponding fabric. right sides together. I'm going to draw that little mark, and then I'm going to glue. So just 2 more, the corresponding fabric. Going to put it on. All right, so now we can take all of this to the machine. We will sew those, come back and press and trim them, and then we can assemble the final block. Alrighty, so we are back to press. So we're gonna go ahead and just clip apart all of our chain piecing. We're gonna set the 2 center pieces to the side for a minute. You guys know this process. So we are very quickly going to press our flying geese and trim them, of course. And then we'll set them to the side for assembly. We're going to go back to the machine one more time to finish our center block. And then we'll assemble. All right, so we'll set these to the side. All right, so they actually want us to press this seam open. And in this instance, I would go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to finger press that open first. And then I'm going to come in and press it. Okay, so just like that. So we've got that nice angle. And then we are going to come in here. I'm going to finger press that also. So I'm going to open that up first. I've got the pieces to hold this. We're going to go ahead and finger press that. All right, now in this instance, all we're going to do is we're going to trim this seam allowance. You're only taking off a single layer of fabric, not a double layer. And then there you go. This is what it'll look on the back, just a traditional. If you want, you can go ahead and do it just like that, but just make sure you haven't done anything there. Okay, so we have it just like this, all right? So what you're going to do is you're going to line these up. And you're going to line that seam up right there, okay? And I'm going to just put a pin there to hold it. So follow the picture, you guys. That's the best way I can describe this, is follow the exact picture. So this is how it's going to look. It looks like this in the picture. I just angled it a little bit better. And what you're going to do is you're going to come point to point. All right, so point to point. Just like that. Now, I will go ahead, because I want everything to stay in place, either pin or glue. So I'm going to put that piece there. And I've got this piece right here, and I'm going to put that in. We're going to sew across here. Now, I've got a pin here just to hold this piece together because I didn't want to glue it. So let's jump on over to the sewing machine. Okay, so now we're back. So we sewed across that line. We're going to trim this part to your 1/4 of an inch. I've removed the pin, and here is our block. So we're going to go ahead and press this one open also. You're going to notice how perfect those 1/4 square triangles come out. That point is perfect. It looks great. Because of all of that extra seam in there, I'm just going to go ahead and press that. So let's go ahead and lay this out. The only real thing you have to pay attention to is to make sure that your flying geese match that 1/4 square triangle piece. All right, so we're going to lay it just like this. Okay, so there is how it's going to lay out. And then as you guys know, it is going to get one piece across the bottom right there, which I have to find where that piece went to. Because remember, I cut it wrong earlier. So what we're going to do is, you guys know this routine. We're going to just put it all together. So I'm going to come right here. I am going to get my glue pin. I'm going to put that in place. I'm going to put that in place. Remember, I put the glue at the bottom. So I'm going to sew the seam this way. It keeps anything from shifting. So that's why you see me turn it, because when I go back to sew the other side, that is going to be the way that it goes in. And this is going to be that same thing here. We're going to turn it. All right, and let's head on over to the machine and we'll sew these last seams, and this block will be all done. Alrighty, so we're back at the pressing table. I'm going to give that a little bit of a mist. Everything is going to be pressed down. So here we go. We're going to set the seam and we're going to press. Set that seam, press it down. And set that final seam. Once again, I'm going to give this one a little mist. And I'm going to press one final press. And that block is done. So if you take a look, we have now made our final block, which goes right here. And there are all of your blocks for assembly. So let's just talk about this really quickly. You guys know how to sew straight seams, so it's very simple. You have 2 end border pieces that are 12 inches long. They will go on the end at the top and at the bottom. You are sewing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seams, and your project is completely done, and then you will have completed sampler stars. I hope you enjoyed this. You got directions on each of the 4 blocks. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow for another Summer Class Pass video. Thanks again, everybody.